Good evening, everybody. This is Scott DeCamp with CatchMark SportsNet here in the Whitehall podcast studio, along with co-host Myles Welch. How you doing, Myles?
Doing good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not having you. You're part of the show now.
Would you comb your hair with a rototiller?
I just got out of the shower.
Pretty soon you're going to be running the show.
Yeah,
He's going to be running it pretty soon. And I can have nights off.
That's how you get the ratings up.
yeah.
We're having him on, having that face on there.
You turn the show over
Having
to
the
him.
younger guys on here.
Yeah.
That's right. People don't want to listen to old guys
No,
like me.
Myles wants to talk. I know what Myles will get on here and talk about all the hip hop crew, the dress styles, and
There you
how
go.
much his kids are getting paid to go to high school.
Right? Just to attend, right?
Just to get there.
Yeah. So this is season 7, episode 2 of the CatchMark SportsNet podcast, brought to you by Chris Wank, Realtor for Century 21 Trophy Class. Do you know Chris?
Awesome cat. Awesome.
You being up from that area?
Yeah.
Or
Well,
living up in that area, at
he,
least.
Chris is he's a tremendous person. If you need anything in the real estate business, call him.
Absolutely. So it's Monday, April 15th, 2024. Without further ado, let's introduce our featured guest, which is Alvin Rischel, new head football coach at Manistee. Welcome, Alvin. Thanks for making the drive down.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on here. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and thanks for always helping us too at CatchMark with stats and anything that we've ever needed in trying to cover Manistee, giving some coverage and stuff. But he's
It's a long drive up there. So.
he's been a great help though. So, we're going to talk about a lot of things, mostly football, but we got a lot of stuff on the agenda. But the great thing about a podcast, it can go whatever way we want to take it. So, and it could go in some really bad directions with the crew that we have on tonight.
Well, thanks for attending, fellas, and drive careful going home. We'll see you guys later. Sorry.
So before we dive into it, let's thank our sponsors: Big Stone Therapies, Rescue 2.0 LLC, Grieve Law, Edward Jones with financial advisor Brett Atkins, Coldwell Banker Woodland Schmidt with David Dusenberry, Farm Bureau Insurance, the Kenny Agency.
Brett Atkins
You
from
remember
Oak
him?
Ridge?
Oak Ridge.
He's got all the money in this town.
He does. He's doing really well for himself. He's a
He's got
great athlete too.
yeah, he's got 17 kids.
Yeah. Got to pay for
have a
him
lot of
somehow.
money.
So we got 5-star real estate leaders with Matt Parker, The Birdhouse, Scheid Plumbing, Heating, and Cooling, Greener Jewelry with Chris Dykman and Sarah Real, and then, of course, our title sponsor, Chris Wank. So diving right in with Alvin here, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you from? Where'd you go to high school, graduation year, all those things?
Yeah, so I'm class of 1996. I went to Manistee till 8th grade. Kind of moved around a lot when I was younger. Ended up settling out in the woods on the Little Manistee River. No such thing as school of choice back then. So I went to Brethren, which is a really small school up by Tippy Dam. Played football, played basketball. Actually quit playing basketball in high school because I had some other things, worked a lot, and found out that I was a better bench player than I was starter, being 5'9", 5'10", whatever I am. So, but played football. Fell in love with football. After high school, went to college locally at a community college. Went into law, started taking law enforcement classes. Had an opportunity to start coaching football at my high school. Started out in middle school, and it was a great opportunity, and kind of grinded my way through coaching there. Went from middle school coach to JV coach to varsity coach to head varsity coach. And then was lucky enough to come over to Manistee in 2018. My son and daughter my son graduated from Manistee, played 4 years for us, and my daughter goes to Manistee right now. So didn't want to miss any of their games. So I resigned from my position at Brethren, and everything fell in line. Troy was looking for some help on defense, and we sat down and had a good conversation. Everything kind of worked out great, and next thing I know, I went from being within about 4 days, I went from being the linebacker coach, the defensive coordinator, and, it was a great opportunity. Got to watch my son play 4 years of football on the sideline rather than up in the stands, which was really great. So, and then Troy retired, as we all know, just within the last 6 months here, and so here we go. We'll see what happens.
So Troy, he was there 7 years, I believe, and we'll dive more than that too. But Matthew McConaughey look-alike.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you try to keep up with that?
With Matthew McConaughey?
With those looks? I mean, no offense.
No, I got
but someone who looks like Matthew McConaughey, you have to replace that? I mean, who is your doppelganger?
Yeah,
what do you look like?
I was actually a little disappointed that you had cameras here today. I was hoping this was going to be voice only, and that was going to be my introduction.
No one's keeping up with Troy Bywork in that department. So, but yeah, you guys obviously, Myles is a co-host. I see you as a co-host. Mike, you know more football. You've forgotten more football than I'll ever know. So you guys feel free to chime in.
Well, I think, when you look back on your career and, tell us a little bit about some of the mentors you've had, Alvin, and what you've picked up from them that you hope to carry on, in your first stint here as head coach up here at Manistee.
Yeah, so when I first started coaching at Brethren, we actually didn't have a middle school program within the school. It was like a local, like MRA, Manistee Recreation Association. And so when I started coaching there in that league, it was all local schools. And we didn't actually branch out to become, the school didn't take over the program until I was about my third year as a middle school coach. And I became the first middle school coach there, and I was hired by Bob Saylor, who came from Frankfurt. He was an assistant coach at Frankfurt, came to Brethren, became the head coach, and then from there went on to Reese to win a bunch of games at Reese. They did really well under Bob. And I'll tell you, I still keep in touch with him, not as much as I probably should.
Oh, how old is Bob?
Oh gosh, he's got to be in his late 60s now.
Okay.
But he was, so when I was a young,
Because Frankfurt had they had some great programs.
When the Kleins were there?
yeah, so he
Because Klein came from Port Central.
Was he?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure he coached with Tim, and he also
Yeah.
coached after Tim was Roger, and he coached with Roger, who ended up going up to Newberry. We actually would travel to go because we ran split back veer back then, because that's what Frankfurt ran under Tim Klein, and
Right.
and so
That's what they ran at Port Central.
yeah, and that's
Bob
what
Knight.
that's what Bob brought to Brethren also, and we actually went up to Newberry to do some camps up there with some of the other coaches from Frankfurt. But Bob was that guy that taught me, as a young football coach, he's the one that taught. The worst thing happened to me when I was a middle school football coach. My first year we went undefeated, and then my second year we lost one game. So before Bob came, I was a young coach. Hell, this is easy. I got this all figured out, right? And then the reality of the Jimmies and Joes kind of kicked in, and we didn't have, our Jimmies and Joes weren't as good, and reality came in, and Bob took me in. He must have seen something in me, but he's the guy that taught me how to organize practices. He's the guy that taught me how to, do a lot of the things that I still do now, and he's the one that taught me how to introduce discipline into a practice plan and still get the kids to buy in and have fun while doing it. And I'm very fortunate to keep a good relationship with him. And like I said, I don't talk to him as much as I would like to at this point, but he's retired now and kind of going on with the whatever coaches do after coaching high school.
Well, and so when you started out, then you were running the veer, okay?
Correct.
And when we say that, we're talking about split back veer. But my question is, at what point in time, or do you still believe in that offense, and do you still run that offense, or have you gone away from that?
Yeah, no, that's a great. After Bob, after Bob left, they hired another coach. I can't remember his first name. Last name was Arnold. He stayed for a couple of years, and I actually stepped away from coaching. A couple of philosophical differences there, but I was also still a young man. And I started kind of hanging out with some of the Manistee crew. And at that point, they had brought in, shortly after that, they had brought in Gus Kapolka. And got to know Gus pretty well. Really good friends with Josh Glass, who's an Orchard View grad. And, Josh was coaching up in Manistee for several years. In fact, Josh and I are still, he's a city police chief up in Manistee now, and we're still pretty good friends to this day. I'm trying to talk him into getting on my staff, but he's got young kids right now. So I became, at that point, my philosophy kind of changed offensively. I became a T guy. And when I learned about T, I dove into T head first and just soaked up as much as I could. and I ran T when I took over the program at Brethren. That's what I installed was Full House T, and then we started to branch out into some kind of Delaware stuff out there too, because you can only. I fully believe in T, but there's when you're coaching at a small school, sometimes your Jimmies and Joes aren't as good. You got to get a little, you got to do a couple of different things to keep kids interested and get them to play for us.
Well, and I know what you're talking about there.
Isn't that what Kingsley? Do they run some variation of that too?
Yeah, they're running Full House T.
Yeah.
I think Gus, to my knowledge, I think he's still running Cedar
Yeah,
Springs.
Cedar Springs, yeah.
He's still running T.
So you'll know this name from Manistee too, Todd Miller.
Right, he was a Plainwell.
Little Plainwell guy.
Yeah.
Yep. So, Myles, what do you got to add? What are you wondering about from Coach Rischel or Coach Taylor?
Conversation when there's gunplay.
Yeah. So one question I kind of have is obviously it's a pretty competitive conference, WMC. Well, as you're in your first year, what's the mentality you want to instill in your players?
Yeah, toughness.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a tough league. There's some really, really good schools,
Yeah.
and I'll tell you, I know this conference kind of realigns every 3 or 4 years, whatever it is, and I'm not really sure how I feel about that, because we're the small school in the Lakes Division right now, right? And so I know that realignment's coming in like next year, I think. But I'll tell you, playing Whitehall every year helps us get ready for playoffs. Playing Oak Ridge helps us get ready for playoffs, right?
Yep.
And those are quality programs that are bigger schools that, whether or not it's realistic, that's what we try to measure ourselves against.
Well,
right?
and you get good points for the playoffs
That helps
by
too.
playing them.
You guys got a nice win at Oak Ridge too.
We
this
did
last year.
Yeah, that was a great game for our kids. That was the game that I think and Troy kind of talked about this at our end of the year meeting with the parents and kids, but the banquet. But like I think that was the game where our kids started to believe that, hey, we might have a chance to do some special things this year. And we knew back in when we heard that they had realigned the districts and Kingsley was coming into our district, we knew there was a pretty good chance that if we were going to make a deep run in the playoffs, it was going to go through Kingsley or vice versa. They were going to have to come through us. And that Montague game really bit us in the rear end, because we win that game, Kingsley's coming to our place, but we didn't. Montague, they had a really good defensive scheme against us, and and they made plays when they needed to. We dropped that one by 2 points. We ended up going to Kingsley a little earlier than we wanted to, but at the end of the day, we were locking horns with them one way or another.
And Kingsley, of course, goes on to win the Division VI state title. So,
Yeah.
you guys, and you scored first in that game, right?
We did,
against Kingsley?
Actually, that game was with about a minute and a half to go before half. It was 14-12, I believe. So, Tim, Coach Wooer's he's had a good thing going at Kingsley for decades. I mean, other than when he left, where did he go to West? I think Traverse City West.
I think so. Yep, and obviously came back.
to Kingsley, but they're just well coached. They don't make a lot of mistakes. You got to force them into mistakes. We were lucky to force a fumble early in that game as they were inside the 15-yard line. That took points off the board, and then we took the ball down and scored first. And I thought we had some momentum there, but back and forth in the first half, and then we made a couple of mistakes, and they capitalized on them, because they're a team that doesn't make a lot of mistakes. So you gotta capitalize on their mistakes, and then you got to keep their offense off the field.
Yeah. So Bite Work was 39-29 in 7 seasons at the helm, 5 playoff appearances, including the last 4 in a row. And how are you looking to kind of continue to build on what's there, and then maybe put your own stamp? You've kind of alluded to some things already, but what are some of the most important components you think of keeping this thing rolling and maybe
No
building
huddle
upon?
and punt on 3rd down. I can see it now.
Yeah, to me, weight room is a big thing, right? And that's a lot of that is keeping that going from what Coach Kapolka brought in, a weight room mentality, and then Coach Miller took it to a whole nother level, and then Coach Bite Troy, kept that going. And
But when you say, Coach, weight room, okay, if you bring, it leads me into the conversation about your administration, okay? Because if you come down here and you go to Oak Ridge, or if you come down here and go to a couple of schools that are really football solid, okay, they incorporate the weight training
That's
classes.
a given, right?
Yeah, well, and you want to be, structured for success, but that only happens if the district philosophy aligns with your philosophy.
Agreed. Yeah.
And so I guess when you say, hey, we the strength and weight training, is that something that's incorporated in the daily schedule of those kids?
Yeah, and I think that's why. I think ultimately that's why they decided to keep this hire in house. Right? Is they don't want to lose what we've already established. We're not going to miss a beat with the weight room. We're going to keep. Weight room's been open. It really never closed, other than the winter break that we have for the holiday there. We get right back into it 5 days a week. And I'll tell you, one of the greatest things is Troy's still in the school. Bitework's still in the school. He's still teaching. For those that don't know, he retired because he wants to see his girls grow up, right? I mean, and they're into sports, and he can't.
I think he's
blame a
what,
guy
46 years old, something like that now.
He's my age, yeah. And he, the nice thing is he's staying in the school. He's still running extreme fitness classes, so he's still able to get a lot of these athletes that play other sports, into the weight room during school hours too. And then, we'll continue to incorporate that after school like we've been doing, and then into the summer. And again, I think that's why they decided ultimately to keep this in-house, is they wanted to keep that same mentality going. The school wants to. The parents have bought in. The community's bought in. And I think a lot of that has to do with, right, it's hard not to buy in when you're making runs to the district championship, which hasn't happened in Manistee in decades, right? So
Now, Myles, you as an athlete at Whitehall, do they have like a class like that back in the day, which was a long time ago? Ravenna when Dusty was there, they had what was called a power PE class, and we had in school. Do you guys have anything like that?
Yeah, so I believe Whitehall, they have actual classes throughout the schedule during the day that people can take. So like weight training as their first hour, you just go up in the weight room and lift.
I can tell you've been living in the weight room.
Yeah. I mean,
Or we want to know where you shop at, for groceries.
yeah.
But Coach, something that's, I always look at, and I advise young coaches going into interview and all this, make sure you understand what your district's philosophy is regarding not just sports, okay, but football, okay? And when I say that, make sure you ask questions in that interview process, because if I'm going to be teaching computer class, I want to make sure I've got good computers. Because if you ask me to go in there and we've got one computer and the two kids have to share it, and it's a computer that's 10 years old, we're not structured for success. So when it comes time to getting in there, and okay, I teach football, I coach people. Okay, so going into meeting and interviewing and all this, how did you feel that the district philosophy as far as football aligned up with what your goals are?
yeah, that's a great question.
I mean, is there anything you ask for that you don't have, that you say, again, I never asked for anything my competition didn't have. I'm not asking to put our kids above them, but I want to be able to compete on a level field. Okay, if these guys are doing this and their programs are successful, I'm going in and I'm asking for that so I can be structured. My kids have an opportunity to be structured like their competition.
Yeah.
That's where I'm going.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say this, right? Like, what's kind of funny is when you look at Manistee, was it just within the last 20 years? I think they had a period where they went 3 years without winning a football game, right? And some of those kids, I still know some of those kids today. So not a lot of growth and not a lot of expectation in the community at that point. In fact, people kind of turned away from football. They brought Coach Kapolka in, who completely changed the mentality of everybody. And I think if you talk to a lot of, and you'll see where I'm going with this, if you talk to a lot of people that knew Gus early, like, he was wound tight. I don't think he'd mind me saying that, but like, he was wound tight his first couple years at Manistee, but he had to be. He had to be, because he had to take something that hadn't won for years and not only try to get the kids to buy in, but he had to get dads to buy in, moms to buy in, the administration to buy in, the community to buy in, and it had to be done right. And he had to start weeding out some of the things and people that weren't working for the program, right? So he had to run a strict ship. I think he's a dad now, so he's probably found some more patience, I would assume. But
times are different now.
yeah, we're talking 20
Times
years
are
ago.
different. Yeah,
you're right.
we're you know, times are different, and so now you want to get the same results, but you got to try different methods.
Yeah.
You know, to achieve that. So
Yeah, and I think where I was going with that is the nice thing is there's expectations in this community now, right? Like I think to that Ludington game, you know, we went a decade with beating Ludington once or twice, I think, and then you know Troy goes 5-2 against Ludington. Todd had a winning record against Ludington, and the only reason I bring that up, you know, nothing against Ludington, but that's the game right now. It has been forever, right? That's the game that we circle on our calendar.
that's the rivalry.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's the I believe it's the 5th oldest rivalry in the state of Michigan. So, you know, and they would say the same thing. If you were to sit down with Coach Gunsel, he would say the same thing. They circle that. I mean, you don't talk about it. You don't talk about it every single week because you got to keep the kids focused.
Yeah.
One week to one, but it's you know it's in the back of everybody's mind, right? And so there are expectations. Boy, I'll tell you this last Ludington Manistee game, there wasn't a seat in the stands. I mean, that's the most packed. We had people packed all the way back to, you know, if you're familiar with the parking lot of our stadium and stuff, all the way back to the pool where the pool is located, just to get into that game in the second quarter, trying to get in. So there's expectations there that haven't been there in the past.
And you get a percentage of the gate.
Not me personally. Somebody's probably.
I heard that wrong then.
So, question for you, and you could, and it's maybe there's nothing to it, but I've heard this about like these quote beach towns, you know, that have Lake Michigan or whatever right there. Well, the kids don't spend time lifting and they're not working; they're just pretty boys that hang out at the beach all day. You can dispute that. You can dispute that, Mike. Is that just silly talk, or is it a mentality? And is that just something that it just depends on the community?
Well, I can only tell you from a Manistee, if you were to look at, you know, when Troy was the head coach there, you would probably guess that, hey, he's a guy that hangs out at the beach and surfs all day. It's just kind of, but I'll tell you, not the case. I mean, our kids put in an unbelievable amount of work and time in the weight room. We're asking them to show up multiple days a week, all summer long. The only dead period they get is the one that the MHSAA requires us to have, and we usually take that around 4th of July, like most schools do. So, you know, I've always said since I've come to Manistee, we win 3 to 4 games every year, simply because of the time that we put in the weight room. And that's not to take away from what anybody else is doing, because there's programs that are leaps and bounds ahead of where we're at right now, but. You know, you take that Oak Ridge game last year. Okay, I mean that's a storied program. That's a program that has, you know,
Serious tradition.
Yeah, tradition and roots, and they're doing almost everything right down there. For us to go down and compete in that game, and then ultimately hold them to 15 points and win that game, you know, that's a testament to the time that our kids have put in the weight room. Because you don't get better sitting at home. You don't get better hanging out at the beach. You get better. Now, we do some of our workouts at the beach. It's a nice little sell to get the kids to buy in. But our kids spend an unbelievable amount of time in the weight room.
I would love to see the stat sheet from that game. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, you say that?
Yeah.
I would love to see the stat sheet, you know, just to see how that reads.
No, and you're right too about you can't win those kind of games, and you don't have the success you guys had by just sitting around. I mean, that's earned in the off season. You earn those seasons in the off season.
And yeah, I actually have something to add to that. Obviously, high hopes going into the year. What kind of preparation, such as 7-on-7s, camps, do you have planned out for this off season?
Yeah, so we've got 3 7-on-7s scheduled right now. Our camp will be in July, and then I think we're hosting a 7-on-7. I know we're going to Cadillac. I like that Cadillac 7-on-7 because they usually bring in probably about 8, 9, 10 different schools, and we get to compete against some other schools that are bigger and sometimes faster than us. And again, it kind of adds to that, you know, where it helps us reach to meet some of the competition. We've spent the last 7 or 6 years now that I've been at this, will be year 7. We compete in the Hope College 7-on-7 every year too. That used to be Kirk Cousins' camp, but now they've changed. I think he's disassociated with it. But they still run that 7-on-7 the same way. And that's just a great opportunity to get our kids down there. It's a 2-hour drive. It gets them out of Manistee. We go down there as a team and compete all day. You're guaranteed 5 games. 2 years ago, we made it to the quarterfinals. Last year, kind of underachieved, I thought. But but just keeping the kids thinking about football, right? That's what we have to do in the summer is keep them involved, keep them thinking about football, preparing their bodies, not just in the weight room, but making sure that they're eating properly, putting the right kind of calories in their body, and we preach a lot of that stuff too. I mean, I'm not a nutritionist, but if you're a young kid and you're not putting enough calories in your body, you can lift weights all you want. You're gonna eventually run out of steam. So a lot of talk and stuff like that. Just trying to coach them to be better athletes overall, because then it doesn't just improve and help with football; it carries over into other sports.
How many of your football players play multiple sports?
Most of them.
Good.
Yeah, most of them.
And you believe in that?
Absolutely.
Good for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think athletes are athletes year round, right? You can't just, it's not like a little button that you can flip on and say, hey, I'm going to be an athlete for the next 3 months. You want to be good at something, you got to stay active and train your body. And it's a mentality thing too, right? You're keeping your brain in a competitive spirit the whole year round too.
Well, and a lot of coaches today, they don't want to share their athletes for some reason. They want their kids to be sport specific, is the quote. Okay, and so in a school with an enrollment like yours, I get it. My question is, when we look at the offense that you run up there, okay, the T formation, one thing in your favor is the fact that teams only have 4 days to prepare for your offense, because that's not an offense they probably see week in, week out, week in, week out.
Not like 25 years ago.
No,
everybody
and everybody today is running the spread and got people, people, 4 wides, and here we go. And so therefore in practice, okay, it's like your defense. You guys, your defense in practice lines up against the T formation. They don't get a lot of opportunity other than, maybe how many hours a week to line up against that spread. But they do see that spread more week in, week out, week in, week out. Okay? Sure. So those other defenses of opposing teams, they're 1 week a year, they got to take time out and figure that out, how to stop it.
Yeah.
And that's to your benefit.
Yeah, I agree. And credit to Coach Whitework for making that transition, right? Like he was a pistol veer guy the first 5 years I was there, right? And he made that switch, and really he did kind of the same thing. Is when he decided to go T, he just consumed himself with it. He was trying to learn everything he could learn. He was talking with, not only it was kind of funny. I was wondering if he was going to start to pick my brain a little bit, but he didn't. He went to other coaches, and I understand why, because he wanted me to focus on defense. He didn't want me to start, all of a sudden now my brain isn't thinking defensively because I'm helping him with offensive stuff. So I understand why he would do that. But, for him to recognize that with the kids that we had and some of the things that we needed to be able to do to compete in this conference, when we made that switch, for him to kind of abandon A, what he was comfortable with, B, what he knew and what he believed in, and to take on something like that and just throw himself into a new scheme and learn it the way he did. And then it worked out perfect because it's a smooth transition for me to come in as a T guy that now I can come in and go, okay, I don't have to start from scratch. The kids have already been running T principles. We'll change some things, of course, coaches do, but I don't have to go in and I don't have to start from scratch now and rebuild for the next 2 years. We can hopefully take off running where we left off.
Mike, you know where Bitework was before Manistee, right? As an assistant, Portage Northern with Skirmerhorn.
Oh, Pete?
Yep.
Yeah.
So I was down in Kalamazoo. I worked there for 13 years, so I covered those schools down there.
Yeah,
so I knew Troy a little bit when he was down there, but
That's
him being a Kalamazoo native, Mike.
Well, I've been there a long time. When we talk about the switch to conferences, okay, for Manistee, how was that proposed to the coaches up at Manistee, and was the administration and were the parents, were they in favor of this? Or were they apprehensive and like, well, we got to talk about this?
No, I think we want to be careful how I say some of this. I think most people were on board and saw the value in it. And I think the biggest reason is the conference we were in prior to that, we were struggling so much to get games, right? There was only 4 or 5 teams. And then at one point, Muskegon Heights was in our conference, and the only problem there is, and they were starting to not have a varsity year in and year out, and so now you're out trying to find 5-6 games that aren't conference games, and
Right.
it just made more sense, especially when we found out Ludington was coming with us.
Your AD just texted me, said you're fired.
Oh,
Okay, well, you answered that last question.
Well, again, and I don't want to speak out of turn, but in my role, I hear a lot of things in my role, and there's rumors always, and rumors like, well, Manistee wants out and Fruitport wants in. I know Fruitport, from what I understand, has applied, or they're in that spot where they want to apply. I think they'd be a pretty good fit. I don't know what the status is with Manistee, and again, I don't. You can't speak on there, and maybe it is just rumor mill at this point, but. So yeah, that's what I've been hearing.
It's an established, well-run conference, okay? And it's been here a long time, and it's going to be here a lot longer, okay? So to be able to get into something like the West Michigan Conference, I think it's a good fit for you guys.
I agree, and I would say, coming from a program that I wasn't here when we did this, but went so many years without being in a conference, right? I think it would be a shame to not be in a conference. And if you're going to be in a conference, you want it to be an elite conference. You want it to be an established conference, because boy, it's one thing if you have a down year, right, where you only win a few games, you can still sell your program by saying, hey, but we got conference acknowledgement for this kid and that kid. You have a down year in a non-conference, in a season where you're not in a conference. What do you sell? How do you recruit your hallways, right? Like, it's tough to get kids to even want to play at that point. So.
I mean, what do you think, Myles, about the West Michigan Conference expansion that happened and where things are at, and just you from like a student and athlete standpoint, how do you think it's gone?
I think as like an athlete and a student, as you said, I think it brings a lot more value to the in-conference games. Obviously, the out-of-conference games mean a lot, but winning with your winning in-conference games means a lot more with the new WMC, and I think it's very competitive. So I think Manistee in that Lakes Conference can definitely win this next year for sure.
What are your thoughts, Mike, on just how it's gone? I mean, you coached in the West Michigan Conference for quite a while at Shelby.
But I think it's it's like Myles was saying. I think you need to really look at your athletes. You need to look at your feeder programs, and you need to look at all of the intangibles. Your middle school, and is it a good fit for your school? Is it a good fit for your kids? And is this the direction you want to take your program? Okay. Yeah. I mean, you'll be well tested when it comes week 10. Okay. And I think you'll be able to handle some things a lot better by being involved in it. And again, I think it's a great move, but the district philosophies differ, around this area. And now I think after in the last 20 years, you're starting to see some of these schools are going, I want to be in that West Michigan Conference. Well, now, will the West Michigan Conference accept you? Will the West Michigan Conference take you? Mm-hmm. So now the conference is in a position to decide, where do we want to go? How do we want to do it? And we can build our own name. And I think it's like Myles said. I think it's going to be a good thing.
I've told this story before, but I was down covering sports down at the Kalamazoo Gazette. Kalamazoo Christian, I think, was 9-0 in the regular season. They played Montague. I think it might have been at Vicksburg or something like that. And I'm hearing all these people in Kalamazoo, Kalamazoo Christian's going to crush Montague. Montague's 5-4. They don't have a chance. Christian's been blowing everybody out. I'm like, guys, don't look at those records. That doesn't mean anything. And I want to say that it was like 35-0 at halftime or something, Montague. And I'm like, I mean, they play in a tough league. No knock against Christian. They had some good teams coming through there, good athletes and stuff. But so it's just a different brand of football. And and Christian played Constantine and Schoolcraft in those schools, so it's not like they weren't facing good programs. But it just kind of speaks to what Mike was saying about you'll be ready in week 10 if you go through that grind.
Well, a perfect example, I think 2 years ago, right? We went up to Boyne City, played a undefeated Boyne City team that was, pretty good program, and we were able to get in there and sneak out with a 1-point win. But we were prepared for that. I firmly believe that playing Whitehall that season helped prep us for that week 10. Playing Oak Ridge early in the year helped prep us, all the teams in this conference, because the competition was just, it was playoff type competition week in and week out for the most part. And it helped get our kids with a good mentality, and it, not just the mentality side of it. One of the things I talked about at halftime in that game, and it was a close game, we were up, hold on, we're going to win this football game, because in my opinion, we'd already played one of the best teams in the state of Michigan when we played Whitehall, right? And so not to take anything away from Boyd City, it's a good program also, but at that point a couple of years ago, I think Whitehall ran into kind of the similar thing where they played Christian a little early in the tournament there. I mean, everybody kind of knew that was a state championship type game.
Yeah, and that was a game they were really. I mean, you were at that one too, weren't you?
Yeah.
They could have should have won that one maybe.
Myles, let me ask you this, okay? You're going to be a senior next year.
Yeah.
Have you, since you started high school here, have you had an opportunity to say, my ninth grade year, I had this guy as a coach, and then he got fired, and then I got this guy as a coach. Have you played in a sport yet where you've had the coach replaced in the systems, since you've been there?
No, not as a player, and I don't really think as any other sports either. I think we've had a lot of our coaches around for many years.
Well, and I guess where I was asking was, like in his situation right now, I just wondered how you adjusted and things you looked for with a coach to change the culture. I think, and so some kids are like, I don't know if I like that. That's a little radical. But then other kids come in and go, oh, we changed, maybe tweaked the uniform a little bit, or we're doing this or that differently. And I really like that new concept that he brought in. That's kind of where I was going with it, to see from your perspective as still a student athlete, if you've had an opportunity to go through that change.
Yeah, for me, it would definitely be the mentality aspect. Like I asked you, the toughness would be a big thing. Bringing in the mentality that we're gonna win and we're gonna find out ways how to, and we're gonna work for it would be big for me.
So what I want to ask too, just a little bit of a transition, is we've got a guy here that's got years of experience and knowledge, under his belt, and just want to find out what you're doing now in the way of football, Mike.
I'm staying as far away from it as I can, unless I can get a great NIL deal.
And yet here you are talking about it.
But you stay involved in it though. You're calling West Michigan. I want to hear more from you about what you're doing now, because you're calling games for WLCS. You're calling West Michigan Ironmen, the indoor football games.
Right. I'm gonna just because of the people I grew up with in my circle of friends, they're still deep in football. I mean, deep, in football. And so whenever I go anywhere socially or what, it's all about football. I do not want to coach at this point in time right now again, but I enjoy, when I bought the 98.3, I bought the Friday night high school football show from Cumulus. And so now I basically own that, and that's out of Grand Rapids. But they let me along the lakeshore, run the show, pick the teams, pick the games, whatever. And so it gives me an opportunity to still see these coaches, talk with these coaches, get to know the athletes, and become not just now. I can wake up Saturday and I'm great, okay? And my son was coaching college football up at Northern Michigan, and he's graduating in 2 weeks. He applied for a position out with Iowa, and been talking with them out there to see if we can get something going out there, and if that's the direction he wants to go. I've still got hundreds of friends that are still coaching, and I follow them, their careers, whatever. But as far as me, I enjoy being able to broadcast football, talk about the game, try and advocate for change to make the game better for the kids. I don't like the way college football is going at all. I don't like the NIL. I don't like the transfer portal. And now I see what the state of Michigan has approved NIL for high school kids. And again, I think this is, I don't think it's in the best interest of the game. I don't think it's everything's about dollars and cents, and it's financial gain now. Okay, we've lost grip of really higher education is about, okay? And I think we need to rethink that whole thing, okay? When you see guys like Saban jump, you know what I mean? That should send a message, you know? I ran into Coach D'Antonio here. You know, we had a conversation, you know, and the feeling's the same. But again, you're talking old school versus the new school, you know, and everything today is, you know, people get motivated by the money. And, you know, I could sit here and do an 8-hour show on what I don't like about it and how I think it's not being respectful to the game. Okay. That's my opinion.
Another transition, something I wanted to bring up, and you kind of made me think of it, is
if I ever coach again, okay, it's going to be in an orphanage.
right.
Because I don't want any of those kids to have parents.
Parents, right.
No.
So one thing I wanted to bring up was we have this student network called the CatchMark SportsNet, a play on words for the SportsNet. Myles was part of that. He still is kind of to an extent. He's an intern for us, but there's more roles on a football Friday night than just being on the field or being on the sideline, you know, coaching or playing and that kind of stuff. You call games. I'm covering them. You know, I'm basically standing on the sideline watching. Myles has done the same thing with us. How cool is it just to have as many people involved as possible? I mean, how important is that? I mean, how great of an opportunity is that for someone like Myles? And could he ever maybe shadow you guys or be on with you guys at some point?
You should get college credit for hanging out with us. Okay?
Sweet. Yeah.
And you might do time too, though. I mean, I don't know which way it'd go, Myles.
Coin flip.
You know, it's 50-50 on the board at Vegas, Myles. You know, but again, you are taking advantage of an opportunity right now that most kids don't take advantage of.
Yeah.
Okay? When we were growing up, stuff like what you're doing, that wasn't available to us. It wasn't even thought of. Okay? So you being in this room, you knowing Scott DeCamp, okay? You being able to sit here and you know, with the coach, and I'm like, you're doing exactly what you should do if this is where your passion's at, okay? I commend you. I think it's great.
Thank you.
You know, I think you got to find ways to have fun with what you want to do, because the minute you're not having fun at it, it's a job, okay? This man loves coaching football. And let me tell you something, he's coaching people. He's teaching football, okay? And so there's a big difference. And as long as he loves teaching the game of football and coaching people, he's exactly the guy that needs to have the whistle around his neck, okay? And you got to find a way to make sure that you emphasize the strengths of people when you go out there and meet them. And you roll with them, and you're going to learn. Coaches are different. You know, people behind the scenes are different. You know, where do you want to fit in, and how do you want to fit in? You know, but for you to be in this room right now, I don't see too many other young kids taking advantage of an opportunity like this, Myles. You know, so I think it's great.
And it helps having, you know, surrounding yourself with the right people and all these things, and just you get that opportunity, just make the most of it. And you know, I think there's also important to have balance for someone young too, for any of us, but for someone your age, and you play baseball and you play tennis and those things, play basketball.
You know, the greatest thing people, and Coach will tell you this right now, okay? The greatest thing about it is these guys he's coaching up there at Manistee, these kids, guess what? He has them for 4 years. Then guess what? They're out of high school and they're trying to find their way and navigate through life. Okay, but now they are ex-players, and now they're friends. And you'd be surprised how many times, you know, that's the one thing I just absolutely love about teaching and coaching is they're not little kids forever. And you know what? You get to go to their weddings. You get to be a part of their lives, and you get to enjoy everything about them being an adult, because such a small window of that time is them being an athlete. This is how much of that time you get to live with them.
No, and I wanted to, so
You know?
that's where I'm going with that comment too, is thoroughly enjoy these moments that you have with your baseball team and everything else. This is great. This is fun. I want you to make the most of this too, but don't like give all that up, like the sports stuff, the high school experience. It's always got to be a good balance. And I mean, I saw you on the bump the other day, Saturday, you know, throwing in that tournament. You're doing pretty well out there. I mean, how much fun was that? How much fun were we having out there?
And you, Myles, you can't worry. A lot of guys walk 12 guys in a row. You know?
Yeah, well, I'm probably the opposite. I don't throw very hard, but I can locate, so that's kind of why they have me out there.
That's good.
He was hitting his spots, pitching with some emotion.
Oh, yeah.
Well, fist pump.
You got
Gotta
some
throw
good
with
people
confidence.
backing you up defensively.
Oh, yeah. We just talking Kyle.
Yeah.
You got a big doubleheader tomorrow against Oak Ridge at home. That's a big one. It's going to be nice weather too, probably,
It's our
right?
first in-conference game, so
Yep.
it's big. So, yeah, this week's pretty tough for us. We got, Oak Ridge and then Bay City and Zeeland Saturday. So,
Oh, wow. That's the home thing?
Yep.
Yep.
Yes, sir.
That's great. Good for you. Good for you. And what draws you to this type of profession, Myles? What makes you want to be a part of this?
I've always followed sports. I think my dad, he's always been big in sports, so that's kind of where I got it from. And then I've always been I've always paid attention to the NFL, MLB, NBA, college sports. So I've always just wanted to be around that my whole life. So it's kind of where it stems from.
Good for you. Good for you.
Nope. And like my role here is, I've been doing this about 25 years, and so I feel like I'm in the second half or maybe more of my career, and I want to start impacting things in other ways, like helping young people like Myles and other people. So building this sports network of students and other volunteers, and Alvin and I were talking about this on the phone. That's really rewarding for me. I'd like to leave a legacy with that, and I think that just trying to give them as many experiences as they can get. We can't pay them. We just don't have the finances.
You don't want to.
Right. Well, dang it, Mike. Told you not to say that on air.
Hey, I'll tell you, and you kind of alluded to this earlier. I commend you for doing this. Like you said, not a lot of young people in here doing this right now, but not only just taking the opportunity to be a part of this and learn from it, but learning to network with people too, right? Like, that's pretty much just talking with you briefly here about the network of people that right? How many doors does that open up for you? Just learning to network with people.
It's not what you know. It's who you know. My four roommates from college, one has gone on. He's become he was the offensive line coach with the Bears. Okay, one of them was director of operations with the Pistons for 27 years. Oh, wow. He was the head of Pine Knob, Meadowbrook, DTE. The third one, vice president of ESPN.
That's
okay,
insane.
And here I am sitting in a square room talking to you. So I win.
Yeah.
Those guys got pressure, and they're doing what they love. But I'm saying, if I need anything, I can call one of those three guys, and guess what? It can happen.
He knows me too. If he forgot to throw that in there too, but
in order right now, it's Scott DeCamp, then the Pope, and then let's go right down.
it's okay. Did I have to pay you to say that too, right?
I'm just letting Myles know.
No, but sir, it is who you connect yourself, put yourself around. Like I said earlier, it's who you surround yourself with, and I hope. Like Coach Rischel and Coach Taylor can form a relationship now.
It is. And again, you paid your dues coming up through the youth programs, through the middle school programs, through the high school. Now the community understands and believes in you. They don't want you to leave. They don't want you going anywhere. Those kids want you to stay there. That's pretty. That's big. That's real big.
It's humbling too. Right?
And you want to coach where people want you. There's nothing worse than coaching where people don't support you or want you.
And did you know that Coach Taylor coached at U of M?
Yeah, me and Kyle are actually talking U of M and Western.
I've been yelled at by the best. Myles, don't ever worry about getting yelled at. I had a coach, Schembeckler, that we were punting, and that ball was punted in the air. And after this punt was drilled, this was the last one. Then we break off and go to individual, in the corners of and as soon as that ball was in the air. Okay, and it went past me. I know I got to go that way. That ball went that way. I took off, and I started walking across that field, figuring I'll get a jump because I want to be over in my position now. And here comes Coach Schembeckler. You know what he says to me? Something matter with your legs? They're great today, Coach. They're great. Run.
Oh, wow.
Run.
Yeah.
I don't want you walking. You're not my age. Run. I learned something right then. Mm-hmm. So here we go. But you get an opportunity, and when opportunity knocks, you take every advantage to meet people. I wanted to come in anytime Scott DeCamp asks me to do something, I'm going to do it. You know what I mean? Because I believe in him and I like what he does. But I get an opportunity to meet a first-time head coach, I want to hear what he's got to say. That's important to me because I'm out of touch with today as far as what would I want to do, how would I want to be structured, and I don't know if they would really understand where I'm coming from. So I want to hear his point of view. I want to hear what he's got to say about his situation up there. If he's content, happy with it, what they're doing, to get ahead of the curve right now, bang. And, and again, we're talking about a coach. What makes it even harder, he's not in the building. He's not in that building, 6-7 hours all day, recruiting those kids, monitoring the problems that go on. He's got to deal with that when he gets to practice, So that's a roadblock right there. That's tough. That's tough. But, man, he's excited. He gets in there and gets a chance to teach football. Man, that's great.
Well, it's funny you asked me earlier if I was in education, and people ask me that all the time, and I'm not. Like I said, I went to school for law enforcement stuff, but I feel like I am in education, right? Like I've been teaching the game of football and mentoring young people now for 26. This is my 26th year, right? I've been able to mentor young people, and to your point earlier, I've got kids that I coached at, when I was at Brethren. I still talk to once a month,
And these guys got kids.
They're getting married, yeah. To your point, they're getting married, having kids, and it's really cool. It's cool to watch these young people become men and then branch off and do what they do. It's pretty cool.
It's so strange because you see some of these kids and these they're little girls going through middle school and hi coach, and that. Mm-hmm. Then you see them 10 years later and they're at a wedding drinking. Yeah. It's like, what happened here? Yeah. And Myles, it happened and it goes
in a hurry
that quick.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
It goes that quick. So for you to be able to sit in here and converse in conversations like this, what was one of the first things I asked him for? His phone number.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I want his contact information. I want to stay in touch with him. I want to know if there's anything I could do when they come down to play Whitehall. I want to talk to him that week, so I can talk about him and promote his team and him and his staff to our area down here.
Yeah.
People said, "Oh, you don't like Michigan State. You don't like Ohio." My son's godfather, is the first black quarterback at Ohio State. And people go, "You're kidding me. How did that happen?" All these guys I got that are coaching, I may play against them. I only want to beat them one day a year. I still want them to stay employed because I don't want their families to go, looking for jobs and moving. And that's part of the business, at that level, because it is a business. And, in your situation right now, you network. You meet as many people as you can. You get as many phone numbers as you can, and you keep a book.
Yeah.
Keep a book, Myles. Keep a book. Because
Gotcha.
You're going to always, like I said, it's who you know. It's who you know. If he didn't know the community up there, he wouldn't get that job. If he didn't know those players up there in that community and the board know about him and the principal and AD know about, he wouldn't have a chance at that job.
Yeah.
Okay?
And also, I know you have high aspirations, and that's great. Maybe to be on a big-time network, calling baseball, calling football, whatever. And that's great. Chase that. Don't ever let anything stop you. But also remember, too, that no matter where you end up, you just want to impact people and have these relationships. It's always about relationships and the mark that you can leave with people. And like you said, like Mike said a couple times, and I know Alvin said the same thing and believes the same thing, you're coaching. It's the business of people. It's not about the sport as much as it is about the people. And that's that way for me. Throughout my career, when anyone's asked me, well, how do you cover a water polo match? I'm like, you're not covering water polo, you're covering people. That's just a sport they play. People don't really care that much about all the ins and outs of that. They want to learn about the people. They want to know about them.
Well, I think what you talked about, too, about the old school thought process, like when I played high school football back in the day, like my high school football coach was my high school football coach. We talked during football. We didn't have we had a relationship, but it was a football relationship, and he went and did. Nowadays, it's I'm in these kids' homes. I'm talking with their parents.
Yeah.
And I think that's changed a lot in the last 30 years of you're starting to look at these young young men and women as like, okay, they're not just teenagers, they're future adults. These are people that you've got to build relationships with. They got to know you and respect you. And that's probably been going on for years, but it wasn't something that I was subject to until recently.
All right, guys. Well, that about wraps it up. Any closing thoughts before we sign off on this podcast?
Ask for a raise, Coach.
Yeah.
Go back in there and say, I want to tell you guys, listen to this podcast, and I'm asking you to please consider a raise for me.
Well, we'll see how the season shakes out.
You can take the money that I'm giving Mike and Myles tonight.
Oh, okay. Double it.
So you're going to walk out here with zero, but sorry.
Hey, thanks for having me on here. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for making the
You
trip
can have my
down.
salary if you have change for a quarter.
All right, guys, before we sign off here, let's thank the sponsors one last time. That's Big Stone Therapies, Rescue 2.0 LLC, Grieve Law, Edward Jones with financial advisor Brett Atkins, Coldwell Banker Woodland Schmidt with David Duesenberry. Sorry about that.
All-American from Alma. Went to, where'd he go? Reese Puffer?
Yep.
Went to Reese. Number
Dews.
20. The Dews was number
Dews.
20. Yeah.
Yep. Just talked to him today about a potential transaction with a vehicle that he's trying to deal. I got kids in the, driving now. So
Hey, he's got insurance. Tell him to leave the keys in it at night.
Farm Bureau Insurance, the Kenny Agency. Speaking of insurance and driving, good segue there. 5-star real estate leaders with Matt Parker. He's from Montague. He lives in Ravenna now. Don't hold that against him. The Birdhouse, Scheid Plumbing, Heating, and Cooling.
The Birdhouse, yeah.
Yep. You know about that, right?
Yeah.
Greener Realty with Chris Dykman, Sarah Real, and then, of course, Mike's good buddy, Chris Wank, Realtor with Century 21 Trophy Class.
Yeah, he just started there.
Yep.
Yeah, Chris just started there. Chris was a heck of an athlete, too. And Chris was a heck of an athlete. I believe it's his brother that just bought the 2 golf courses behind me.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Benona and Oceana.
See? His brother's probably 40. Just bought 2 golf courses.
That's the thing. I usually golf at Benona, so.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Well, when you're on 2T, okay, when you're on 2T, Miles, turn around and look behind you up on that hill. That's my house.
Turn around and fire a warning shot to Coach
ahead.
Taylor.
I know exactly what hill you're talking about.
Go ahead. And I'm telling you right now, and just when you look at that house, just think, that guy had to win a lot of football games to pay for that house.
Okay, yeah.
I'd be careful turning around looking so you don't know what he's going to be. If he's going to be standing on the deck just wearing a Speedo or something.
Here's the great thing. Because 2T is right there in front of my house, right? And I watch, and on like Sunday mornings or something, I've got a nice speaker system outside, my house. And I sit there, and when somebody comes up to the tee, they get set. Everybody's quiet. They're just in their foursome or whatever, And as soon as they get ready, I hit the button and I play as loud as I can the theme from Rocky. And
My goodness.
they turn around and they start jumping around on the green and everything, and they start and then they go back to the clubhouse. Who's the idiot that lives on 2T over there? He's playing the theme from Rocky when we're trying to tee off, So, yeah, that's good stuff.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys. Have a great week, everyone. Thanks for watching.